So one of life's unsolved mysteries has officially been solved. The question of what would happen to inside the NBA after next season has absolutely finally been resolved. It appears the good folks over at the Mothership have done it. They've secured the rights to the TNT show, which will remain in actually Atlanta, will remain produced by a group of people inside TNT and will essentially be licensed by the Mothership. This deal was actually announced a little earlier in the day. It's actually part of a larger settlement between TNT's parent company and the National Basketball Association. But enough from me. Gonna play a video for you next from Dan Patrick. He's interviewing one of the athletic reporters who does a fabulous job getting into great detail. I'll be back in a couple minutes with some final thoughts.
Inside the NBA, going to the Mothership and ABC. How did this happen?
So 3 weeks ago, Jimmy Pitaro, the chairman of ESPN, called Luis Silverwasser, who was the counterpart at TNT Sports, and he said to him, essentially, you have a problem that I think I can solve, and you can solve one of my problems. ESPN's problem has been that they have not had, a good enough pre- and post-game show around the NBA. They've tried to, for a long time, with a million different combinations to be as good as Inside the NBA. They never could quite do it. They had some good shows over the years, but never good enough. And so, with the new packages coming along, TNT Sports has finalized an agreement with the NBA, after they were suing them. And so what happens inside the NBA could be on TNT Sports. But the little thing that people don't realize about these shows is that they're really only as successful as the games they're around, right? Like ESPN's ratings a lot of times with their pregame show was higher than TNT's ratings, which I think would surprise people. But the quality of, especially with Barkley, who was on your air all the time, he's the best ever in my opinion. Ernie Johnson's a tremendous host. Shaq has gotten much better, and Kenny Smith's a good, you can shoot the three when it gets kicked out to him in terms of their grouping. And so it made sense for ESPN to bring them in. Countdown goes to their number 2 show. TNT gets about 25 college basketball and football games from the Big 12, kind of lower tier games. They need inventory. So a win, but especially for ESPN.
But I'm worried about the ESPNification of this. Does ESPN try to come in and say, hey, you know what we're thinking? And that usually doesn't go well.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen, Dan. I think that, and I wrote a column on The Athletic that's up there right now. This is the Jimmy Pitaro era. And if you look at his playbook, Peyton Manning, he wants Peyton Manning. Hey, Peyton, you can work from home or your friend's garage on Mondays and make Monday Night Football. He wants Joe and Troy for Monday Night Football. Obviously, money was the big thing there, but they were going to get broken up. Troy was kind of on the out with Fox. They got to stay together. Pitaro did that. McAfee's show, you can do it from Indianapolis. We'll license the show. There's a similar arrangement. I think that's the Pitaro playbook. I mean, if I'm a producer there, I'm kind of saying if I'm in Bristol, and you know it well, you're kind of like, well, what are we doing? Like, we can't get this right. The big boss keeps outsourcing our programming. That's not a good sign, especially for the big shows. But it's not the same Bristol. I've said this before. I refrain from it from this column, but Jimmy Pitaro is a huge Yankee fan. He's kind of the George Steinbrenner of sports media right now. He's got the most money to play with, or at least the most money that his company is willing to play with. Obviously, these tech companies have more money, and he's going out and getting what he wants, especially in terms of the on-air people.
Any guarantees given? Barkley is 61. He's got a 10-year deal that he's only, a couple of years into of. I mean, that's a big chip of how long is Charles going to be there? How important is he to this deal?
Yeah, I've been told there are stipulations. I don't know exactly what they are. I mean, the big.
So that was Andrew Marchand and Dan Patrick from a little bit earlier in the day. I always forget to do this, but if you are new to the NBA Rundown Show, please go ahead and subscribe and, of course, like this video. All right, so some thoughts on this deal actually getting done. Now, there's a couple things that could actually add a bit of a wrench to this specific deal. And that is, of course, Shaq, whether or not Shaq actually gets lured away by potentially bigger money from Amazon or NBC. Shaq is not under contract currently for next season. Now, Shaq has certainly said publicly that he does want to be back with the TNT crew. He certainly will have a significant amount of leverage, if you will. He'll have big daddy leverage heading into those negotiations. I am willing to bet that Shaq ends up staying with the TNT team. I absolutely love what the folks over at ESPN have actually been doing over the last couple years. When you think about them bringing Troy Aikman and Joe Buck over, allowing Peyton Manning and his brother to actually call Monday Night Football games from their basement/garage offices, has been nothing short of brilliant. Then bringing over the Pat McAfee show, and for all intents and purposes, leaving it alone for the most part, simply a licensing deal. Certainly, there has been a shift in strategy at ESPN over the years, and the most recent stretch of shifts has involved actually licensing other people's content, which is probably a good idea. Now, look, nothing wrong with the current NBA show that ESPN actually has. It's just that given the opportunity to actually bring in inside the NBA, and I'm sure the folks over at ESPN in this particular case are not going to touch it at all. It would be a shame if they did. I don't think they'll touch it at all. I think it will be the same show that we've all loved over the years, and it will just simply continue being aired on ESPN. All right, tonight I leave you with a funny video from the guys over at TNT who actually were actually making fun of ESPN a little bit. It's a little blurry. I apologize for that, but enjoy. And thanks once again for tuning into the NBA Rundown.
Why wouldn't you go to ESPN? Why wouldn't you go to ESPN?
They're not going to work me like a dog. I'm
just saying.
The
things that happen on this show.
ESPN 1, 2, 3,
You know what?
ESPN News, ESPN U, ESPN Radio, and then come up with that little puny trick.
Nothing.
You wake up,
ESPN Deportes.
I'm telling you.
Nothing good happens after 1:15 in the morning.
ESPN Deportes.
They have me on ESPN Deportes and say, muy bien, gracias. La muchacha, Emelito.
Hey, you have been working on it, haven't you? Thank you, Rosetta Stone. All right.
Ernie.
The only thing that can possibly
You see them guys, you wake up, you see the
the only thing we can possibly do
is Phoenix.